Hello and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 13th show and tell of this phase of development for BoPS, a new back office planning system that processes planning applications. My name is Tom Buttrick from Southwark Council, and we're all here today to show you what we've been working on over the past 2 weeks. Please do subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and we'll keep you up to date with what we're up to. This show and tell is being recorded and we'll upload it later today, so you can pass that on to any other colleagues who may want to watch it. A big thank you once again to our partner teams at Buckinghamshire, Lambeth and colleagues at Deluxe, and also our colleagues at Unboxed for their ongoing work on this groundbreaking project. Next slide, please. BoPS is a software, BoPS is a software application that is designed by and for local planning authorities. And it's, as I said, it's designed to process planning applications in a more efficient and intuitive way. Our users are planning officers who process an ongoing caseload of planning applications, and the planning managers who make the decision and send the decision notice to the applicant. The tool is currently processing live lawful development certificate applications within our partner councils, and we're doing that alongside our sister digital, the Ripper tool, which is the Reducing Invalid Planning Applications tool. So BoPS is the tool where the planning officers process the planning application, and the Ripper tool is where the applicants, the people who want to build something, submit their application. And Ripper sends the application to BoPS to process. Next slide, please. If you have any questions about what we show today or about the tool, do click on the link in the description below or in this YouTube stream, and there's a slider link there where you can add your question, and we'll answer those at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So what have we been doing today and the past couple of weeks? Next slide, please. So
it looks like we might have lost Tom, so maybe we can just pick up on this slide for him. So what have we been doing this sprint? So the focus for this sprint has been improving the validation process. So there's been quite a few activities that we've been completing to work towards that and to work towards improving other parts of the system at the same time. So during this sprint, we completed quite a few tests for the assessment process. So that's the new assessment against policy function that we introduced and that we demoed during the previous show and tell. We've also been working on iterating the validation user experience, and then some smaller tasks include editing dates on manually uploaded documents so that officers can be sure that they're using the right dates for those when they go onto the decision notice. We've been researching with officers on assessing immunity cases, and we've also been continuing to make improvements on any bugs that we have identified, and introducing cucumber specs, which we'll go into more detail a bit later on in this presentation. We're also really pleased to welcome a new team member, Ben, who I'll pass on to now just to say hello to you all.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben. I'm a developer from Unbox, and I'll be joining the development team at BoPS. I'm going to be replacing the irreplaceable Rianne, but I'll do my best to fill the void when she's gone. And I'm really excited to get stuck in and meet the wider team. Next slide.
Great, thanks, Ben. So for anyone who's not aware of where we are at the moment with the projects, we're currently in the private beta phase. And what that means is that the partners are accepting real LDC applications through Ripper, and then we're processing those on BoPS. And so far, we've received 14 applications through to BoPS across the 3 councils, which might not sound like that many cases, but it is worth remembering that people can also use Ripper just to test if their proposal would be PD. So not everyone who's testing the service is actually going ahead and making an application. So the public engagement has been greater than maybe it's reflected by that figure. Throughout the projects, we've been taking an agile approach, and during the private beta phase, that's been really helpful because it means that partners can instantly share any positive feedback that they've received from applicants, any questions that they have for each other, and any possible bugs that have come up, so that we can address those ASAP and keep those cases on time. We're still dual processing all live applications at the moment because there's no public interface for BoPS, but I'll explain in a bit more detail later in the show and tell how we plan to create that interface as we move towards the public beta phase of the projects. So I'll pass on to Tom now.
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Tom. I'm a designer at Unboxed. And what I've been working on this sprint is a few smaller improvements to how BoPS works and how it supports officers to do their jobs. And the first of those is editing the document date received. So this is when the date the document's received when manually uploading documents. And this is important because documents need to be recorded when they were received into the council. So if they've come in by email or post, the day that happens should be used in cases sort of determine the valid from date. But obviously this date might be different from the date it gets uploaded to the system. And so to support this, we've now sort of, we identify two types of documents, those that have arrived through an API. So those might be things that come through Ripper when the applicant makes their application, or it might be when an officer's made a validation request. So we have a way for officers through BoPS to make digital requests, which send a message to the applicant requesting them to upload a document or make changes. So those are sort of automatically loaded into the system, dates are captured, manually uploads, the officer has the opportunity to go and edit and create this date received, and then also to go and edit it later. And it's important that officers sort of understand those two types of documents, which work in slightly different ways. Next slide, please. I've also, or the team's also been working on supporting applicants to reject all validation requests. So I mentioned validation requests just before, and validation requests are when an officer comes across an issue with the application. Say, for an example, a document's been submitted, but the document's missing a scale bar and it doesn't have a north arrow. So it's an invalid document and therefore the application is invalid. So they might send a request to the applicant asking them to replace this document or to with one that has a scale bar, has a north arrow, for example. And we had a whole range of different validation requests looking at red line changes, incorrect fees, new or replacement documents. And some of these applicants could accept or reject. So they could say, yes, I agree with these proposed changes, or no, I want to reject them. However, for documents, document requests, they were only given the opportunity to upload. And so to help ensure consistency and also to support officers and applicants to have a strong line of communication, applicants are now given the choice to accept or reject requests for new or replacement documents, as well as sort of other requests which might relate typically to fee. And this is important because it ensures consistency across the way these different requests work, and it also supports this transparent, open conversation between the council and the applicant themselves. Next slide, please. And finally, I've been looking at research on immunity applications. So we've, and you'll hear about in the next slide, some testing we've been doing on assessing permitted development rights, and particularly against the GPDO. And another aspect of what we're looking at is how officers can assess immunity applications, so certificates that support in those cases. And this has been great. So I've been speaking to different officers, really exploring the pain points and the goals of what they're trying to do. And that's really sort of highlighted lots of stuff around document management and how there is a huge amount of sort of administration of documents, which is kind of abstract from the actual process of considering, determining, and assessing the evidence that's being provided. So we're thinking about ways that we can support that, and so some sketching is going alongside those research activities at the same time. So I'll now hand over to Freya, who will talk about some other testing we've been running.
Thanks, Tom. So in the last show and tell, we showed you a demo of the new application process in BoPS, and that consists of the assess against policy action. So that's where officers can select which classes of the GPDO they want to assess the development against. And this allows officers to view the GPDO legislation for each class in turn, so they can select whether the development complies with that requirement. So we've tested this with 6 officers from 3 different councils during the sprint, so we could record their experience using the new process. And we're really pleased to report back that the feedback was really positive. the overall feeling was that it was a really clear and intuitive method for assessment. That was easy to follow. So officers were really pleased to be the first people to see that. They also felt that it saved work, so it saved them time having to refer across to the legislation. But they did note that there wasn't any column to record comments, which is something that we already planned to add. So we'll be getting that in there so they can record comments, whether or not that part of the development does comply. They can record why it does or does not comply. We also had some suggestions for other small changes, such as a different title for the task. So instead of referring to assessment against policy, changing that to assessment against legislation. And we had a couple of thoughts about whether it's best to have the original text from the GPDO put in there, or if we should use more simple English, because it is quite difficult to understand. But as officers, part of their role is to be able to read that legislation. So we'll be thinking a bit more about that. So we'll be doing a bit more testing with that going into this sprint and just making more improvements. But yeah, really exciting to have people using that and to get such good feedback. So I'll now pass on to Steph, who's going to talk about cucumber specs.
Hello, I'm Steph from the Tech Lead on BoPS, and yeah, excited, even though it might not appear to you as exciting as it is to me, to say that we've introduced cucumber specifications, which means that basically, as you can see on the right side of the slide, we've started writing tests in a way that really sort of encapsulate the business logic. So there's a lot going on in the background here, but allows us to really outline how we want BoPS to behave, which is really useful for us to sort of consolidate, the way BoPS work. Ben is new, I'm new, and so we've had to gather that information from a bunch of different people. So it's been nice to start writing features with those tests to back us up. And this is just a beginning. As we develop the app more, we'll write better steps and maybe be able to be more concise on some of them. But it's really exciting for us, and it's already proven quite helpful for the GDPR references, for example. It's been a great help. So we're really excited to sort of protect ourselves with those specifications moving forward. Thanks. I'll hand over to Melissa.
Thanks, Steph. I'm Melissa. I'm one of the developers on the project, and over the past couple of weeks, we've had a couple of large pieces of development. One mainly focused around UX, which I'll take you through in a little bit, and the other one around business days. So up until this point, we used normal days for when an application was received. This meant that an application would start within 40 to 35 business day. Within 40 to 35 days, it would expire after it being received. But now we actually just account for normal days, and we exclude UK bank holidays, and we exclude weekends as well from all of the accounts throughout the app. Now, the second largest piece of work that we have been focusing on, it's about improving the user experience throughout the app as we are going through the validation process steps. We are not showcasing this week, however, because after testing with partners, we decided that there was still space for improvement within this process. And we felt that the language could be made clearer. We felt that this process could be iterated upon. So we're working to improve the overall experience and make sure that we can use language that's very clear and that all the steps that we take through the validation process feel more natural and logical. So even though these screens that I'm showing you right now, they are in our staging environment, we want to make sure that before we go to production, before we push this into a real world environment, that it's as easy and as clear a process as it can be. So look forward to hearing more on that over the coming weeks. And I will hand over back to Freya.
Great, thank you. So you'll be aware that we're in the private beta phase at the moment, and you might be thinking, when do we plan to move to public beta? So we have begun to scope out what we would need to do to progress onto public beta. And currently there's an accessibility order just about to start for Ripper. So that will make sure that everyone can use that service. And once that audit is complete, we might be able to launch the find out if you need planning permission part of the Ripper service quite soon. However, the full move to public beta for Ripper and BoPS will actually be quite complex, as it will involve partners really sweating the details of both the systems, drawing out any bugs and making sure that we have all the planning legislation correct within the systems before we do go live. And we'll also need to train our staff to know how to process applications on BoPS and make sure that there's enough support in place for the public who will be making applications. Because once that link goes live, so once we do go into public beta, the link to submit via Ripple will actually go live on all the partner websites. We're going to be receiving hopefully a lot more cases and a lot more than we're used to. So we want to make sure that we're really ready before we do take that step. Another thing we need to do that I touched upon is creating an API that will link all the data to a digital planning register, so that we can stop doing the dual processing, so that everything processed on Ripple and BoPS is visible to the public. So whilst we're really excited to make the move to public beta, we are aware that we need to approach that move with an open mind and focus on getting things right before we do go ahead and take that big step. So I'll pass back to Tom now to close up.
Thank you, Freya. Great to see some of the hard work there that's taken place over the past couple of weeks, particularly as a planning officer, the assessing applications against legislation, which is really great to see, and we look forward to iterating that. So the next sprint, again, we're going to be continuing on validation improvements. Melissa outlined some of the UX updates that we'll be doing, and we'll be really happy to show the further work on those in 2 weeks' time. As Freya touched on as well, we have got some really good feedback from the assessing applications against policy / legislation, and so yeah, it's going to be great to bring that feedback from the user testing into the next iteration of that. We're going to be looking at how we may need to do changes to the application's description outside of the validation process that it currently sits in. So we'll be addressing that. We're also looking at multiple file uploads, a bit of bug fixing, and bringing some more GIS data, and in this time actually ward data, because we recognise is that some local planning authorities allocate cases by ward. So that data would be really helpful to have in the tool. So we'll be bringing that in, and we'll also be just further looking at the how we calculate dates within the tool, particularly around expiry and target dates. So yeah, lots to do, and we look forward to getting stuck into that. So next slide, please. As ever, if you would like to get involved, if you would like to test some of these new pieces of functionality, if you'd like a demo, do get in touch with us, and we'll be very happy to come in and show you more. Next slide, please. So this comes to the end of our presentation today, but we're going to check to see if we have any questions. So I'm going to hand over to Freya to ask her, have any questions come through today, please?
So we have had one question that's come through. And that is, what happens if an applicant wants to amend their application to make it PD?
Good question. So just to clarify that, so if an application has been submitted and I take it if the proposal, for example, a rear extension, doesn't meet the requirements of the legislation, it will be refused. So if the applicant realizes this and wants to amend the application, i.e. submit new plans, the process to do that isn't currently in BoPS, but it is the functionality to submit documents is there in the validation part of the tool. So we'll be in the near future, we'll be delivering the functionality and working on the functionality for an applicant to submit amended drawings, amended documents for their application after the application is valid. It's something we have picked up, and we're working on it, and we'll be introducing that in the near future. Tom, is there any other comments on that one you'd like to just to make? Because I know you've been working on that one.
Yeah, I think it's we certainly have the features to do it. I think one of the things we're currently trying to figure out is that when an applicant makes a submission through RIPA, they answer a series of questions, and those questions align with the drawings and documents that they've submitted. So the challenge might be if they make an amendment to a drawing, we also need to find out how we can amend those questions and quite what the approach for that is, whether that's done on their behalf by an officer or whether that's done through the applicants going through the list of questions again is still a sort of open question for us. And we're thinking about ways, sort of part of getting RIPA and BoPS to work together in a more integrated way is to think about, for example, in that case, if there is a change made, how is it made? Is it made on behalf through a consultation and then the officer just sends it for approval, or is the applicant sort of put in charge of that and they sort of proactively make those changes and send them to the application? These are all still open questions for sort of both parts of the project to think about going forward.
Thanks, Tom. I mean, that's interesting, kind of an idea of self-service to do that. So that's there's some good questions for us to deal with there. And yeah, we will get stuck into that. So Freya, were there any other questions at all?
We haven't had any more questions, but just to the person that did ask that, as both Thomas has said, we'll bring that back to the RIPA team as well, because it is a really interesting question and we'll start thinking about, especially as we do move towards the public beta phase. But no more questions at the moment, Thomas. I think we can probably close up now.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And thank you once again to everyone who's worked with us on the tool over the past couple of weeks, to all partners. And we will be running the next show and tell in 2 weeks' time, and that's Thursday, the 28th of October. So it'll be 10:30 usual time, and we look forward to seeing you then. So thanks very much, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.